Hello everyone, my name is Gabby, and welcome back to another Dragon Ball Super Review. This time reviewing episode 108. As Goku fights with Ribrianne, Gohan has a difficult fight against the Yard Rat Jimmers, until Frieza steps in to help. But Frieza's hesitation makes everyone suspect that he's going to defeat Gohan instead to increase the chances of him getting the Super Dragon Balls at the end. And this suspicion is confirmed when he reveals that he's teamed up with Frost and beats Gohan. But as Frost congratulates Frieza for his victory, Frieza blasts him out of the arena, saying he would never work with an amateur like him. It turns out his attack of Gohan was a ruse that Gohan willingly followed to try and catch Frost off guard. And as Frost tries to retaliate from the stands, the Zeno erase him from existence. So, what did I like about this episode? Well, first of all, last episode we had the kind of unusual but honestly pretty interesting interactions between the Muten, Roshi, and Vegeta. And this episode we had the interesting interactions between Frieza and Gohan. Once again, this is one of the advantages of a Battle Royale format, and the advantages of having Frieza here in the first place is that you can see these interactions between these characters that you wouldn't normally see in any other scenario. Even in this case, their interactions mostly just revolved around Frieza kind of disrespecting Gohan and Gohan kind of doing his best to try and still kind of stay in the game. But it was a unique kind of atmosphere, it was a unique kind of relationship that we wouldn't normally really get a chance to see on screen, and it did lead to something that I think a lot of people had wanted to actually see in Resurrection F, and that was Ultimate Gohan versus Golden Frieza. Even if that fight was kind of basically just for show, and it was pretty short, and it ended basically exactly how you'd expect it to. Also, as kind of clunky as it was having these characters basically just randomly start expositing over this, I did like the sort of revelations over the possibilities of Frieza's plan. That is, at some point Frieza might essentially betray everyone, not necessarily just so everyone else gets erased, but basically after they've almost won, so at the end he'll be chosen as like the complete winner of the Tournament of Power, and he can get the Super Dragon Balls, and if he gets the Super Dragon Balls, he can pretty much get anything he wants, and he can even bypass Beerus to do so. If this is something that's actually a possibility that Frieza's actually thinking about, that is honestly a really interesting scenario, because the one thing that was making me kind of believe that Frieza wouldn't actually be able to achieve anything was because if Frieza did anything out of line, Beerus could basically destroy him on the spot. But if this is the case, if Frieza is trying to scheme for the Super Dragon Balls, then at that point he's beyond Beerus' jurisdiction and he actually could do a lot of harm. Just by explaining that, they gave us a situation that could happen that means that, like, all of the gods that we have on our side will not be able to stop Frieza from doing something bad, and that makes things kind of tense and interesting. And also, I found Frost's defeat in this episode really kind of satisfying. I mean, in the beginning we already kind of had a grudge against him. He defeated Krillin and he almost defeated Vegeta and was essentially responsible for taking out Roshi as well, so we did kind of have a grudge against him, and even then it's sort of like I was never really such a fan of his character because, well, he is basically just another version of Frieza, just maybe a little bit more sneaky perhaps, but kind of not really. Because in this episode, it's sort of like despite everything that Frost has done and everything that Frost has tried to be, he kind of gets defeated by Frieza, essentially the original version of Frost from a story perspective, outwitting him, outsmarting him, and overpowering him. And then when Frost doesn't seem like he's going to take that failure, he literally gets erased from existence. I know some people might think that that's kind of almost a waste of a character, in that, like, if Frost is really erased then he's never coming back. But, you know, as somebody who thought he was almost kind of an uncreative character, especially when the fact that Frieza is here in the tournament, it's almost just like we kind of had too many Friezas. It almost kind of feels like we're getting rid of a character who was sort of repetitive and is kind of unneeded. So I kind of found this somewhat satisfying, even if it's from a kind of sort of twisted sort of sense of humor kind of way. As for what I didn't like about this episode, well, just disregarding the fact that the Jimmers fight wasn't really as cool as I thought it would be. Like, you'd think a fight against someone who could teleport, having like a teleport fight could actually be really interesting, but they didn't really do much with it, and it was a pretty short and nothing fight. The other thing about this episode was that when Frieza stepped in to pretty much save Gohan from Jimmers and sort of defeat him, he kind of explained that Gohan probably could have been able to deal with this and this situation wouldn't have turned out this way if Gohan had just sort of gone full power from the start. To which I have to say, actually, Frieza kind of has a point. Why didn't he do that? I mean, the assumption I've had this entire Tournament of Power as to why these characters are kind of using their lower forms and not sort of going full power at the start was that because they're trying to sort of save stamina. Like, you know, no matter how efficient your form is, if you punch somebody harder than you normally do, the assumption is that takes a little bit more out of you. But in most of those cases, it still often felt like when the characters were actually legitimately in danger or fought a legitimately strong opponent, they did pretty much go into the form that would go and help them defeat them. But with Gohan, it kind of felt like because he was sort of holding back, he got into a situation in that fight where he almost got defeated and only got saved by Frieza managing to save him at the last minute. And in fact, that situation seemed to happen twice. And you'd think if Gohan was in that much danger of being defeated that he would try to decide, okay, now it's time to get serious and use my full power. And if people are still asking, yes, we know Gohan didn't go full power because he didn't have the hairbang. That happens when he goes full power. That has been a kind of consistent part of the story at this point. So unless Gohan wasn't actually in any danger and Frieza just intervened kind of prematurely, it makes Gohan look kind of a little bit dumb. And in any other scenario, I might actually accept that maybe that was the intention, but in this arc, they've been pretty full-on kind of explaining to us that Gohan is actually a really good fighter now, and we should be taking him seriously. So it just feels a little bit odd. I'm not saying that characters aren't allowed to make mistakes, but when they do, it should feel kind of believable. And considering this arc has kind of been telling us that Gohan is actually really good at fighting, I don't really find this believable. So, as for next episode? Well, it's time. It's time for the big sort of double episode 1 hour special that seems like it's going to consist mainly of Goku's fight with Jiren. Yes, Goku is finally going to fight with Jiren, and it also seems like Goku is going to pull out all of his trump cards, even the ones that we didn't even know that he had, to try and defeat him. But will it actually be enough? Even though we do know that this is going to be related to some kind of new form that Goku is probably going to get, the fact is, just sort of seeing how kind of conventional it seems to be, I'm always expecting there's going to be some kind of twist to it, especially considering that it doesn't seem like that's going to be like the end of the tournament. This could end exactly how we expect, like Goku gets a new form and he beats Jiren and he saves the day, or it could end completely differently, and I'm almost wondering if there's going to be a twist. I'm sort of expecting the twist at this point, and I could be wrong, but then again, I expected a twist in this episode, and this episode had the same twist that I thought it was going to be, so, you know, maybe my track record at predicting this series is getting better. I am very curious to see what they're going to do. And of course, if they're putting in their big, fancy, flashy animation into this special, I am going to be very interested to see as well. Also, I'm praying for an insert song that isn't Limit Break Survivor, because that would be even more amazing, but that probably won't happen, but, you know, I am hoping. It'll be really interesting to see. So that was Dragon Ball Super episode 108. For what it was a fun little episode with some interactions between Gohan and Frieza and an honestly very fitting end for Frost considering his character. In all honesty, the weirdest thing is that it doesn't really feel like this is the episode that should be like immediately preceding the 1 hour special, which is the thing that's making me think that the 1 hour special has some kind of twist to it and it might not in fact be the end. So yeah, for what it was, the episode was completely serviceable. For what's going to be happening next, the episode feels a little bit surprisingly low stakes. So I do kind of wonder what's going on, but I did at least enjoy the episode for what it was. We do have a week's break before the actual special starts, so I mean, I guess we have plenty of time to speculate about the special if we want to, and to speculate about stuff that may happen after the special and whatnot. I actually have no idea how much longer this tournament is going to go. We are kind of running out of characters that we sort of need to have rematches for, and we are kind of almost running out of contestants, so I do kind of wonder what's going to happen. What are the big things? What are all these characters actually here for? What's the actual important fights? If this stuff is all just like the fun stuff, where there isn't really much progressing or not much really happening, what's the really big stuff? I'm very, very curious. I've been curious since the very start, and now that this stuff is sort of coming close, I'm even more curious. So this is Gabby, signing out, and I'll see you all in 2 weeks. Bye guys!